never get out of the car.
As a Bond fan and game collector, I purposely sought out a copy of 007 Racing. Even if I looked at reviews ahead of time, they would not have deterred me from doing so. I was going to play this no matter what. I expected I'd find a flawed game with some redeeming qualities, and I'd come before you to declare, it's not that bad. Well, I'm sad to report it's much worse. I actually played 007 Racing 2 years ago with the intention of reviewing it. It took me at least 5 hours to beat, and that was spread across 3 days because I kept getting so mad I'd storm away from the PlayStation. The experience was so depressing, I didn't wind up making a review, and I promised myself I'd never do that again for the sake of a YouTube video. Of course, this means I'm breaking that promise just this once, so I can make this video and put the whole ordeal behind me. I now know this game can be beaten in under an hour if you're already familiar with the progression blocking bullshit it's going to throw your way. It's possible the game's difficulty was a result of its short length, but I'd bet money it has more to do with the fact that the industry as a whole was still trying to figure out what 3D action games were, and that trying to create a James Bond story that takes place entirely behind the wheel of a car is a difficult task. Let's start with story. Well, it's very James Bond-y. James Bond-ish. Level 1 acts as the pre-credits action set piece, but sadly there is no opening credits or song. There are 2 cutscenes. The first one plays at the end of Stage 1 and shows Bond rescuing a damsel. I really like this part where Bond smokescreens their pursuers. She looks back and then gives Bond a really uncomfortable, almost disgusted look, like Bond forgot he had an Olaf the Snowman sex doll in the back seat. This short scene has the Bond theme blaring, the Aston Martin flying off a ramp, baddies going over a cliff and exploding. Honestly, this cutscene has the best Bond flavor in the whole game. After this, we get a briefing from M, and you can see here Bond sits down at the conference table alone, and across from him are some old 60s looking computers. We never see M in this scene despite the fact she's talking the entire time, so it seems to me M has had her consciousness transplanted into the computers like a posh Anem Zola. The rest of the story is conveyed almost entirely through text, which is easily missed unless you happen to notice these teeny tiny little arrows on the mission select UI. Pressing right on the D-pad reveals actual story, and not like a synopsis or setting, but dialogue and important action that sets the scene for the next level. All of it reads in a way that I can best describe as a dungeon master's narration, like this is a 007 pen and paper session. If you miss this text, then you'll probably be confused as to why you're in New York one minute and then Mexico the next, and then suddenly controlling your car from the fixed camera angles of a security system, then racing along a river with Jaws and a boat shooting mortars at you. That sounds weird. You're not in the boat with Jaws, you're in a car, and Jaws is in a boat. Anyway, it doesn't matter, moving on. The story goes that while Bond was rescuing the damsel, a NATO cargo ship was pilfered in the Atlantic. Aside from stealing military-grade weapons, the crooks also made off with a Q-branch car that has cutting-edge GPS technology. Bond follows the stolen cargo from New York to Mexico and gets himself captured. He's locked up with another woman, who turns out to be a doctor the baddies kidnapped and forced to work on creating a new virus. Her kidnapper turns out to be the woman we rescued at the start of the game. Her and her father orchestrated her capture to distract MI6 while he attacked the ship and stole the GPS. Bond escapes captivity. Why is that so hard to say? Bond escapes captivity, blows up the bad guy's underwater lair, grounds his plane, and narrowly escapes the blast to have a shag at sea with the good doctor. I guess she won't be escaping the blast, if you know what I mean. I'm intentionally leaving a lot of detail out of the story to make my point that at its core, it's a typical Bond story, and it works for that. From there, it has cameos of characters like Jaws and Sheriff Pepper shoehorned in, and when you take a critical look at micro-narratives of the missions, it raises a lot of questions. To put it succinctly, having to put Bond in a car for the entire story arc is a difficult thing to do, and I don't feel they had enough ideas to fill this game's 13 stages. Take for example when we're in Mexico. Xenia Onatopp from GoldenEye is curiously back from the dead. We race her along Why did I write desert? We race her along a jungle road that ends in a death pit. Of all the ways to resolve this situation, Q-Branch decides we need a parachute for the car. In order to give us one, we need to collect transponders strewn across the road, which will allow MI6 to zero in on our location to drop a parachute on the road. If we don't grab this parachute before Xenia, she'll use it to survive the fall and will plummet to our death. This mission and others amount to little more than time trial races with checkpoints, but the narrative leaps taken to contextualize them in-game makes MI6 feel inept and unorganized. In each stage, you are of course driving one of 10 classic Bond cars, but unlike the films, none of them come preloaded with any Q-branch armament outside of the machine gun. Even the bulletproof shield on the back of the Aston Martin is a pickup you have to get during a mission. This mechanic shouldn't feel out of place, as it's very common in video games, especially for vehicle combat arenas like Vigilante 8, but it doesn't fit for a Bond adventure. Let's look at the game's third stage, where we have to destroy 10 Crown Victorias possessed with the spirit of a Spanish bull. Instead of giving the player a car loaded with armaments, they are instead strewn around the arena, which is nothing more than a box-shaped alley. Bond has to drive around and collect everything before he can fight back. On the video game side of things, this sounds perfectly normal, but narratively I can't help but ask, what the fuck, Q Branch? Are you trying to get Bond killed? Touching back on the arsenal, none of it's really fun to use. Hellfire rockets and machine guns shoot straight ahead. Oil slick and smoke shoot straight back. The laser and EMP are non-combative and have super short range. So short, in fact, that when you use the EMP to destroy computers, they explode and damage the car. I found no way to avoid this damage. It could very well kill you, and for a game without checkpoints, that means restarting the stage. The Sidewinder missiles are the only homing weapon in the entire game. If you use them in combat, you'll block progression and have to restart whatever mission you're on from scratch. This isn't limited to Sidewinders either. You can actually block your progression in some stages if you run out of the regular Hellfire rockets and machine gun ammo. It's easy to miss your target since the rockets come out of the side of the damn car and pickups don't respawn. What's that? Ooh, I can hear you typing right now. Hey Rob, ammo doesn't respawn in a lot of games, and you're right. But guess what? The completely useless nitro boosts respawn. Yeah, why does something I don't need to finish a stage get to respawn, but if I accidentally shoot a Sidewinder in the heat of battle, James Bond is defeated by a wooden fence which is only weak to Sidewinders? Also, most games that require you to shoot and kill enemies to progress give the player tons of extra ammo or at least give you another means to attack, but since you're driving a car, you can't exactly melee a forklift to that. This game desperately wants to be a third-person shooter, but it's been shackled to the idea of keeping the player in the car the entire time. Look, I'm 6 paragraphs into the gameplay portion of a review about a game with racing in the title, and I haven't even talked about how the cars handle. And it's pretty good, actually. Of course, that's when you're driving fast, but this game constantly requires the player to drive slow and come to a stop. Accelerating from a stop feels like we're waiting for Bond to put it in gear. Great for a racing sim, but awful for an international man of mystery trying to escape an explosion. Controlling the cars with the D-pad makes it very easy to oversteer and wipe out, but you shouldn't be playing with a DualShock. I mean, you shouldn't be playing this at all, but I understand some of us need to stick that fork into the power outlet to learn our lesson. 007 Racing does have split-screen multiplayer. Noah and I played it a few years back, and it suffers from the same shortfalls as single player. Having to face your opponent in order to attack them is too cumbersome a task when you're both driving cars and your weapons fire straight ahead. We both fell into the strategy of peppering the maps with landmines and trying to trick the other player into driving over them. More often than not, we ran into our own armament. This game desperately needed more automated weapons so players could focus on driving fast and outmaneuvering their opponents. Perhaps some fun could be had in multiplayer if there were bots, but the game modes are all one-on-one. Think about how Mario Kart would play if you only had green shells, banana peels, and the green shells are destroyed as soon as they hit a wall. When it comes to visuals, 007 Racing is not a pleasure to look at. And no, that's not just because it's on the PS1. I have a lot of love for how PS1 and N64 games look, and I think the nicest thing I can say is the art looks like it's meant to be viewed when driving at high speeds. But again, the game has lots of objectives that require the player to slow down or stop, and it's at these moments the simplistic geometry and smeared textures really stand out. This game also has some of the worst PS1 texture warping I've seen. The MI6 cars you control all look awesome, and each stage starts with a rotating camera close-up so you can get a good look at them. If I had to guess, I'd say the polygon budget was blown in the cars and too little was allocated for the environment, enemies, and decorators. Here's a short montage so you can see for yourself. When it comes to the music, I really enjoy what 007 Racing has to offer. The songs are fast-paced and fit with the action. I'm not really the right person to be trying to label music, but to me, some of the tracks bring to mind words like funky, and they invoke images of Austin Powers. Others make me think of turn-of-the-century Eurodance that leaked onto American television around the game's release. Not all of them incorporate the Bond theme, so thankfully that doesn't get overplayed. My one gripe on the music is that I don't care at all for the track that assaults you when you first boot up the game.
James Bond.
Welcome to Sprocket, I'm your host, Peter.
The soundtrack has been on my gaming music rotation since 2018, and I mostly listen when I'm concentrating. That's really the best way to experience the game's music, because when playing the game, every time someone speaks, it interrupts the song. How often does someone talk during regular gameplay?
Now pay attention, 007.
Don't even think about using the car as a battering ram, 007. Pick up some ammunition, for heaven's sake. Do be careful, 007. That paint is incredibly hard to find. For the sake of the car, 007, return fire.
Objective attained.
Try to find a medical kit, 007. The rear screen is titanium laced with carbon web. You should be safe for the moment. Careful, 007. Titanium armor will protect you against stupidity. The protective screen is on the rear, 007. Keep circling until you find its weak side exposed. If you don't have your health, 007, you don't have anything.
For my first playthrough of the game, I actually played 3/4 of it muted because I couldn't take any more of Q Branch's insults. Sure, it's a fun little trope in the Bond films that Q tells Bond to grow up and not destroy his fancy gadgets. But now imagine that joke is repeated every other minute for the rest of the movie, and you have 007 Racing. To this game's credit, it's at its most enjoyable when I get to drive fast and thread the needle around bullets and explosions. Tearing ass through city streets and jumping rivers is a gaming pastime that's hard to grow tired of. What does grow tiring is having to restart dozens of times through tedious trial and error gameplay, which far too frequently results in the player blocking their own progression. Honestly, I'm a little worried that this review isn't quite selling how frustrating this game can be when you go into it blind, so here's 10 things about 007 Racing that make me want to rage quit. You can unknowingly use too much ammo during a fight and not have enough left over to finish a stage, forcing you to restart. Weapons auto-switch on pickup, which can cause you to fire off a progression-critical item by accident, forcing a mission restart.
And neither is that vehicle.
I just fucking killed myself because I didn't know I had the Hellfires equipped. Smoke and oil slick pickups appear on stages where there is no combat. If you don't earn enough points during the course of the level, you can beat it but still fail, forcing a mission restart. Oh, I failed. I fucking failed. Oh, I spoke too soon. I fucking failed. You are forced to stop right next to objects that explode and can kill you, forcing a restart. Mission critical items can be hidden in ways that require you to take damage to retrieve them. You have to drive backwards to shoot other vehicles because your weapons only fire forward and the AI can only drive straight at you. You have to back out of the main menu in order to prompt a save. If you want to name your save file, you have to rename it every time. At one point, my brake/reverse button would only brake and not reverse. This was only resolved by resetting the PlayStation. Reverse, reverse, reverse! Oh my god, I can't reverse. And that's just a list of 10. Trust me, there's a lot more. In fact, you can find out just how much more by following a link in the description or the end card to a video of me playing through the game. You'll get to see everything this game has to offer and derive joy from my suffering. Fucking god fucking damn it. I think for now I'm going to wrap this up as 007 Racing has taken enough of my time. The magnitude of tiny issues makes this the gaming equivalent of a death by 1,000 cuts. It pains me to say that because while it's fun to pull a bad game off the shelf and riff on it, I know behind every game is a group of real people who had a job to do. I want to be very clear that my criticisms are laid at the final product and not the effort or talent behind it. Getting to work on a 007 game was likely a very exciting prospect for them. While this game has come to represent frustration for me, I can also imagine that during development there could have been genuine thrill and excitement in the Technic's office. the developer had the unenvious task of bringing to life a 3D, driving-only James Bond action game at a time when 3D action gaming was in its infancy. It's easy for me to say that even back then, games like Vigilante 8 had figured this out, but I'm not sure even those games have aged as well as our memories of playing them. And this is where 007 Racing's legacy resides, as a reminder of 3D gaming's first stumbling steps across the carpet before it found its footing. Thanks for watching.